What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Team to Beat Miami Heat basketball channel. My name is Amir. I hope everybody's doing well today. So, for almost the entirety of the NBA offseason, everybody on the planet was under the impression that the Miami Heat were going to acquire Damian Lillard. And the Portland Trailblazers traded Damian Lillard to the Milwaukee Bucks right before the start of training camp and shocked the NBA world and put all of us Miami Heat fans into a tailspin. And so without Damian Lillard, it's hard to view the Miami Heat as a true championship contender and a team that is going to make it back to the finals after an improbable run last year as a eighth seed. And the Heat also lost two starters last year. We all know that we've lost Max Strus and Gabe Vincent. Gabe Vincent wasn't a full-time starter last year. He took over for Kyle Lowry at the end of the year, and he was the starter during the playoffs. And, he had a really good run that helped him get a contract with the Los Angeles Lakers. So, again, I know Miami made it all the way to the NBA Finals last year, but a lot of things had to go right for Miami in order for them to make it. And so, for starters, the Heat shot a league best 38% from three throughout the entire postseason, despite shooting just 34.4% during the regular season. And they were ranked 27th at that clip, essentially. So, a complete 180 to help them get through the first few rounds of the playoffs pretty easily. And then they did end up cooling off considerably, especially in the finals against the Denver Nuggets. But the Heat do deserve credit for beating the opponents that they did beat. Obviously, they beat the Bucks. Giannis did get hurt, but injuries are something that every team has to deal with. Like, that's the luck of the draw. Like, every year is dependent on injuries, honestly. So we got a little lucky there. But we had our own injuries, obviously, as well, with Tyler Herro missing pretty much all the playoffs. And then Victor Oladipo, who's always hurt, also got hurt in that series as well. So we did lose some depth. And he was a good defender, even though he was inconsistent on the offensive end. But either way, we still beat the Celtics, which was awesome. In 7 games, I was hoping we were going to sweep them. But I'm just happy we didn't blow the first 3-game lead in playoff history. That would have been historically shitty if that happened. Um, but yeah, the Heat last year didn't have the best regular season. They were 44 and 38. And honestly, this offseason, they haven't really added a ton of talent. Obviously, again, we missed out on Damian. We missed out on Drew Holiday, technically, who was also traded to the Celtics. So Joe Cronin did a good job of really spiting the Miami Heat and making two of our rivals even better um, in terms of the top heaviness of those teams. So, um, yeah, I don't know if the Heat are going to be able to top 50 wins plus this season. I don't see them flirting with that. So, um, my prediction in terms of wins, I think, is going to be 48 wins this year. So, at least four more than last season. I could be completely wrong, and they could be a 53-win team, possibly. But a lot of things have to go right in order for that to actually happen. So I'm going to stick with 48 wins. That should get them possibly a top 5 seed, hoping they can get at least top 4 so they can be a home court team in the playoffs. But yeah, I think the ceiling for them would be third in the regular season. I don't think they're going to have a better regular season than the Bucks or the Celtics. But when it comes to the playoffs, you never know. So again, the Bucks and Celtics did improve this offseason. But the good news for Miami is that we still got Jimmy and Bam. Um, Butler specifically is coming off a really good season. He averaged 23 points, 6 rebounds, 5.3 assists, and 1.8 steals per game in 33 minutes or so. Jimmy also shot a career high 53.9% from the floor. and he took things to a whole new level in the playoffs. We all know that Jimmy is Himmy. In the playoffs, he's one of the best playoff performers in the NBA. He elevates his game in that clutch, and playoffs do tell, as Pat Riley always says. So um, Jimmy balled out until he got an ankle injury, and he still balled out afterwards and took the Heat to the finals. So I don't if he didn't have that injury, that ankle sprain, which was pretty severe against the Knicks in Game Two, I believe, when he stepped on Josh Hart's foot, I think we could have possibly had a chance to win. Like that injury would have been like a 4 to 5 week injury in the regular season. And Jimmy only missed one game. So obviously he's a trooper. But in 22 games in the playoffs last year, Butler averaged 26.9 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, 5.9 assists, and 1.8 steals per game. And Adebayo also had a really good season last year and playoffs. Um, he averaged a career high 20.4 points per game. We all know that Bam has had issues with his aggressiveness, assertiveness in games, and he kind of has probably reached his ceiling as an offensive player. He hasn't been able to develop a 3 point shot, which we've been all talking about, us Heat fans and Heat content creators have been talking about how he needs to elevate his game and start kicking threes, but he's been improving in the mid range. I mean, he had no mid range his first 2 seasons, and so he's drastically improved there. Um, so he could improve. I mean, if he can get up to 23, even 24 points per game, that's going to be really impactful for the Miami Heat. But he's been hovering around the 19-20 point mark for the last few seasons. So, um, he is making strides again offensively with the mid-range jumper, his pick and roll game, pick and pop game. Um, but yeah, it's not just offense which makes him stand out. It's his defense that makes him really special, and he's a defensive player of the year candidate every year, even though he gets screwed every year. But yeah, he's one of the best two-way bigs in basketball, and him and Jimmy are just two dogs with a ton of tenacity on the defensive end, which makes it hard for opponents to score. So they've always been like a top 10 defensive team. So that's going to be important. They need to jump up to like a top 5, 6, 7 defensive team if they do want to improve in that win category next year. Um, Tyler Hero is obviously still with the team. Obviously, he was in the trade rumors for Damian Lillard. He was being mentioned as a centerpiece, and he did have a good season, genuinely last season. He had an average of 20.1 points per game, 5 rebounds, like 5 assists. He did take a hit in his value apparently because no one really wanted to trade for him, and especially Portland didn't want him to be the centerpiece because again they did have a crowded backcourt, but they still ultimately ended up getting a backcourt player who they could have traded. So if they didn't want Hero, they still could have received him and traded him to like the Nets, Jazz, Spurs, or one of those teams that showed interest in Tyler Hero. So the Heat are hoping that he does make a leap. He has a vendetta, he said, or he didn't say, but we all know that he wants to prove NBA GMs, players, teams, scouts, coaches, that he is a valuable player. He thinks he's one of the best players, young players in the league, and he thinks he can go up another level, especially if he becomes more efficient. He hasn't been the most efficient scorer in his 4 seasons, so he hopefully can make a leap. If he can make a leap and average 24 points, also, I don't expect Bam to do that. I think Bam will stick to like again 19 to 21 range. But if Tyler can increase his scoring by 4 to 6 points, that would be huge. And I think he is going to get more opportunity because Jimmy and Bam don't care as much about scoring and don't take as many shots as Tyler does. Tyler, as long as he's efficient, can get to the free throw line more and shoots well from three again um, on catch and shoot and pull up threes. I think he can get like 24 points per game. And so I'm going to predict that Tyler averages 24 this season. I don't know if he'll be an all star, but if the Heat are a top 3 seed, who knows? If he's averaging 24 and like 6 rebounds and like 5 assists, possibly. But we're going to really have to depend on him and his efficiency. And he looked good in the preseason. So he looked really efficient. And he definitely has a motive, to prove the NBA that he is a top player. So the Miami Heat also are going to be depending on some of their younger players. Nikola Jovic is a smooth power forward who can hit the three. He could play make a little bit. He could put the ball on the floor. Um, he played well, obviously, for Serbia in the FIBA World Cup. They made it to the finals but lost. He's had a rough go in the preseason. Summer League, he played a game, got hurt. Preseason, played a game, got hurt. So he's kind of dealt with some small injuries, but he hasn't shown the consistency yet. But he only played 15 games last season. Um, so this is kind of like his rookie year, if you will, because I think he'll be getting more opportunity. We'll probably play more like 60 games or so. I don't think he's going to play every game, possibly, um, because the Miami Heat is a really deep team this season. So um, I think the player that could get more minutes than him possibly is our rookie, Jaime Jaquez Jr. from UCLA. He looks like he can be in the rotation. He also is suffering from an injury. He might miss our game against the Pistons, the season opener on Wednesday. He played well in the preseason. He played one game and then missed the rest of the preseason with that groin injury, but he looked really good. Um, he was a good rebounder, playing good on defense, getting some buckets, hitting a couple jumpers, had really good footwork in the paint. So he's a tough player who's going to be like an energy type player for us. He's going to be one of our other Swiss Army knife type players. And so I think he'll be a good wing option for us in the back end of our rotation. So excited for Jaime Jaquez. Um, as for other players, the Miami Heat added that we all know, the Heat added Josh Richardson, so he's back on the Heat. He also is hurt. He is dealing, I think, with an ankle issue, so he missed the last two preseason games. But he should be fun. Hopefully, he's consistent. But he is going to be a good two-way player for this team as long as he's hitting his three at a higher clip. He's going to be an impactful player in our rotation and a possible starter. We also signed Thomas Bryant for really cheap this summer. He's our backup to Bam. So I think he's one of the best backup centers that Bam has had in his 6-year career. Bam is going into his seventh season, I think. So a big improvement, an upgrade over Deadman and who was it, Zeller last year. So I'm happy to see that he's been playing pretty well um, in the preseason. Um, so he's going to be a good big man coming off the bench. So I'm excited for that. Um, Richardson again should help ease the loss of Gabe Vincent, even though he's not a point guard, but he is going to be our point of attack defender. And we're going to need him to play well on defense and hit some threes and be an energy guy for us as well. Um, excuse me. Caleb Martin is hopefully going to have a big year for the Miami Heat this season. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens to Caleb this year. He had a good regular season last year, but he was also really fantastic in the playoffs. More so, he averaged 13 points, 5.4 rebounds per game in the postseason. He shot 53% from the floor. And the incredible stat was that he shot 42.3% from deep in 23 games. So was that a fluke or not? I don't know. But that series against the Celtics, he should have probably been the Eastern Conference player of that series. Like he was averaging like 20 points per game and he was crushing it. He really played super well in that series specifically. So um, Caleb's in the last year of his contract. He's only making 6.8 million next year. So um, he's in a contract year, and if he wants to get that bag, he's going to have to play really well. Not sure if Miami's going to be able to keep him if he does play really well. But if he does, he's going to make some similar money to like what Max got, which was like a $60 million 4 or 5 year deal. So he's going to be playing for the bag, which excites me that he's going to be putting a lot of energy and effort into his season so he can finally get a good contract. I think he's like 27 years old or so. Um, so he is looking for meaningful money. Um, so I'm excited to see what he can do. As far as the rest of the roster goes, the Heat made multiple roster moves on Saturday um, before their season opener against the Pistons, which is just 2 days away. So, firstly, the Heat signed guard Drew Smith to a multi-year standard contract, which kind of surprised me because I think Jamal Cain probably deserved that more. But we do need a point guard. He's the only other point guard now on our roster outside of Kyle Lowry, so I guess it makes sense. And then we also converted forward Cole Swider to a two-way deal. So hopefully he's our next sharpshooter, our next Max Struess or Duncan Robinson that comes up in the ranks. Other news: the Heat waived forward Justin Champagnie and center Shake Diallo, who didn't really have much of a presence with the Heat in the preseason. So going back to Drew Smith, he was inconsistent for the Heat during the preseason. He had some solid games against the Nets and the Spurs. He finished that game against the Spurs with 9 points and 10 assists. Actually, that was against Brooklyn, excuse me. And then against the Spurs, he had 13 points and 3 assists. So pretty good games, but he was inconsistent. He had two other bad games. Swider, he was also inconsistent for the Miami Heat during the preseason, but he showcased an impressive ability to score the ball from beyond the 3 point arc, notably against the Hornets. He knocked down 5 of his 9 3 point attempts in a little under 14 minutes of play, and he finished with 17 points in the preseason win. He also dropped 15 points against the Nets and made three threes in that game. So Swider and Smith likely won't see the floor consistently again because this team is super deep during the regular season, but their preseason stints seem to have impressed the Heat, considering they've both been rewarded with these contracts. So kudos to them. Um, so if you want to take a look at the rest of the roster, um, the Heat are deeper this season, and a lot of people have been talking about that. And as you can see here, we have now Thomas Bryant, as I mentioned earlier, as Bam's backup. We have Jimmy Butler, of course, who is going to have a good season, but he's going to rest. I know there's a new load management rule, but I think he's still going to play anywhere from like 55 to like 65 games. So there are going to be opportunities for Caleb Martin, who's going to be Jimmy's backup, to get time and opportunity, and he's going to need to shine. And players like Haywood Highsmith, who I didn't talk about, who had a really good preseason. Look at his salary; he's only making 1.9 million, which is crazy. And like, God, a guy coming from Wheeling Jesuit College, like, what is that, a D3? Never even heard of it. So, um, Haywood Highsmith has emerged as someone who could play, who's probably going to be the backup four. Um, and then, of course, we talked about Jovic and Hawkes, our youngest players, are going to play as well. We have Duncan Robinson, who's going to be coming off the bench in our second unit. Um, Players like Orlando Robinson, who signed a standard contract, I don't think he's going to get a lot of time. Um, it's probably in blowouts. He'll probably get some minutes, but unless Thomas Bryant or Bam gets hurt, then he's going to be at the very back of the rotation. Same with Drew Smith. I don't expect to see him play a lot, but I think he's going to play more than Orlando Robinson, especially if Kyle Lowry gets hurt or Josh Richardson. So I think Josh is going to have to kind of play possibly as a point guard. Cole Swider probably going to get minimal amounts of opportunity. Same with RJ Hampton. But and Jamal Cain even, like, we're really deep. If you think about it, we have um I think Kyle is going to start, especially at the beginning of the season. I don't think he's going to play a lot in the first quarter, but maybe he'll start for the first 4 to 5 minutes, and then Josh Richardson will come off the bench. It was speculated that Josh would start, but I think Kyle is going to start. Kyle, and he's going to play with Tyler at the shooting guard, Jimmy at the three. I think Kevin Love is going to be the four, and then Bam is the five. K Love and Lowry are going to play limited minutes. And then coming off, I think for Love is going to be Highsmith. Off the bench, coming in for Jimmy is going to be Caleb. Coming in for Hero is probably going to be Duncan. Coming in for Kyle is going to be Josh, and then Thomas Bryant for Bam Adebayo. And then Hawkes, of course, is going to then get some time, I believe, in Jovic as well. I think for the most part, we'll get maybe 10 to 12 minutes to start. I think Hawkes will probably get a better opportunity or more of an opportunity than Jovic. So we'll see. So that's my prediction of who the starters are going to be. Um, I'm excited for the depth of this team. And again, I think we're going to win 48 games or so this year. We're going to be a top 5 seed. And I don't want to make a prediction yet for the playoffs yet. Maybe I'll do that later. But as far as regular season, I'm going to say 48. And I think we're going to have a good year and surprise a lot of folks. But I don't think the Heat are going to win the NBA championship this year. Could they get back to the finals? Possibly. I'm not going to say no, but I don't think they will. I think not getting Dame and a player like even like a Bradley Beal, possibly, maybe not Beal. Let me scratch Beal out of there because I think Tyler can make a leap to make up for that. But just not getting Lillard, I think, was really detrimental to this season. So, not saying we're not going to have a good season, but just who knows? I think we really needed to make that move, and it's just unfortunate that we weren't able to get him. But nonetheless, I'm still excited for the season. Can't wait to see how this roster performs, and I'm just hoping we can win this year for Jimmy. He deserves it. This window's closing. He has a couple years left, so maybe mid-season or next year we can get another superstar or all-star or former all-star to come join the Heat to help us get over that hump and win a championship finally for Jimmy Butler. So thanks for watching, guys. Regular season is going to start soon, so I'll be doing a bunch of recaps and we'll be creating a lot more content. So if you want to see more content from me, please subscribe to the channel. I'm on my path to 400 subscribers now, so really hoping to achieve that goal at the beginning of the season. So thanks again for watching, guys. Have a good night.